Hi class, this is your demonstration on making a color wheel with the three colors that you'll be getting in your kit. You'll have yellow, red, and blue. Those are our primary colors. And I have my student here helping so you can see how it goes. Your paper that you're going to get in your kit is just a paper with a circle on it. Yours will be a little bit smaller than this, and you'll already have a circle. What you'll need to do is this. You'll need to put a dot approximately in the center of your circle. Once you've made your dot, you're going to mark 2 o'clock on a regular clock, 10 o'clock on a regular clock, and 6 o'clock. And you're going to use a straight edge to go straight to the center circle and make a line to those 3 dots. Once you've done that, that's 10 o'clock, it'll look a little bit like a Mercedes symbol if you hold it upright. Then you're going to make a dot halfway between those 2 lines and connect your dot to the center. Once again, it should match up with the lines you already have. Now you can't just cross it and cross it because it doesn't work out. You have to start with 3 sections. That's why you have to make those 3 dots, okay? Because you will have 12 sections eventually. And if you just go in half, you end up with 16, and that doesn't work. So you're going to do the same thing again. Make a dot halfway between these and connect those through the center dot. Yours will probably be neater than mine because you'll have more time. You can start and stop this video anytime you want. So when you're done, you should have 12 sections. And if I were you, I would count them. Do you want to count with me?
1.
Put a finger on the one you start on. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Perfect. You need 12 to get the color wheel even. On the bottom of the page, what I want you to do is create a rectangle like this and divide it into 4 sections. You can use a ruler or a straight edge. They don't have to be perfect. You can do it freehand if you want to. 4 sections. In the bottom here, we're going to mix grays and browns, what we call our neutral colors. Okay? Let's get started. Okay. So we'll be all set. The first thing you're going to do is label your color wheel. Pick any section, and we're going to start with our primary colors. So you're going to write red anywhere you want. Then you're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. When you get to the 4th one, you're going to write blue. You can turn, I like to turn my page around so I have them on the edge, but you can do it any way you want. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you're going to write yellow. Those are the 3 primary colors. Primary colors cannot be mixed. They must be found in nature. That's why you have these 3 colors. Red, yellow, and blue. If you mix them together in different ways, you can get every single color in the world, even blacks and browns, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Once you have labeled red, yellow, and blue, you're then going to figure out blue. You're going to do your secondary colors. So blue plus red equals?
Violet.
Violet. So you're going to write violet halfway between there. So you have blue, a space, violet, a space, and red. Then you're going to figure out yellow plus blue equals?
Green.
Green. And you're going to write green there halfway between those 2. Next, red plus yellow?
Orange.
Orange. Those colors are called the secondary colors. 1 plus 1 equals 2. Primary plus primary equals secondary. And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to add a primary color to a secondary color to make what is called tertiary colors. Those are those in-between colors. So when you write them, you always write the primary color first. So if you mix red and violet, you get what's called red-violet. And you can just write RV, red-violet. If you mix blue and violet, you get blue-violet, blue-V. Blue and green, you get
Blue, green.
Blue, green. Yellow and green,
Yellow and
yellow, green. And yellow, orange, again you start with the primary color, so it's yellow, orange. Orange and red makes red, orange. Use your eraser when you need it, like I do. Red, orange. So once you have it all the way labeled, the first thing you're going to start with is the easy part that you don't have to mix. You're going to start with your primary colors. You'll want a fairly small brush. When you're using watercolors, the water is important. So you should have a nice clean jug of water and change it whenever it gets dirty so your paint is not muddy. And then you should also have a paper towel to keep things neat and a couple sheets of extra paper to test your colors on. So once we start mixing, you'll be checking your colors on these extra pieces instead of messing up the work that you're doing on your color wheel. So we are going to paint the red, yellow, and blue directly from our palettes here. And then we'll come back and show you what that looks like. Okay, one thing I want you to keep in mind with watercolors, again, the water is really important. So you're gonna dip your brush in your water. I tap it on the side so it's not super, super wet. And use water, let me show you here, to get the pigment. So you're going to add water to this pigment so that you can get some good color. And I would mix it up a little bit so your color is nice and rich and not too watery, because then you'll have light blue instead of blue when you do this. So I'm going to go over here. The reason we do it like this is twofold. We're learning how to mix gradually, but also if you do it like this, you will have time to let each of these dry before you do the next section. And if you do the next section when it's wet, the colors will bleed together and it'll be kind of a mess. So I'm making sure I separate the colors when I'm painting until they're all dry. So for blue, like I said, a little bit of water, go to the paint. I would suggest going around the edges first and then filling in the middle. And it's not a pen, so you have to remember when you're using a brush, you have to keep going back to the paint. You can make a few strokes, but you can't make 20 strokes like you can with a pen. You have to go back and get more paint, okay? And do the best you can. The other thing is, there's no rule that says you have to have your piece right side up. I turn my paper, I turn my paints when I'm working on a table because I can. It's not like an easel where you can't, well, actually I turn those upside down too. But for this, I make it easy to paint without messing it up. So there we go, red, yellow, and blue. And those should be as neat as you can make them. Always clean your brush really well in between and just tap it on the edge or wipe it on the edge, and then it should be ready to go. We're going to move on to mixing the secondary colors now. Use these little wells to mix your colors together. So we're going to do violet, green, and orange. And when we do this, along with the other colors, the best thing to do is to make sure that you have your little scrap paper here to test out your colors, because if you test them here and they're wrong, it'll mess you up. So I'm going to do orange first, and my student here is doing, what are you making there?
purple.
Is making violet. So I'm going to make sure I get some nice yellow. Before I put my brush in the red to make orange, I'm going to clean it. Otherwise, I mess up my beautiful red there. So I'm going to make sure my brush is nice and clean. And I'm going to take some red and add that. Now I'm going to test that color and see if it looks really orangey. I think it looks a little bit dark. It should be halfway between red and yellow. So I think I need a little bit more yellow in that. When you're mixing, make sure you mix up enough to do your whole section, or you have to try to match colors, and that's not good. So add enough water where you can make that happen. Now let's see. I think this is a good color. What do you think?
I think that's a good color.
Okay, I'm going to make it a little more intense by adding color and not adding a lot more water, because it looked a little watery to me. But I'm going to try to get close to that same color. That's a good orange. So then I'm going to go ahead and paint in my orange. You'll use the same process with the other colors. So you can see you probably want to add more color so you don't have it quite so watery. This is a little bit light. It works. It's a purple, but you might want to make it more intense. So you could make it a little bit more intense. And we're going to be right back once we've got those colors in there for you so you don't have to watch us paint all the time. Okay, and we're back. So we have our primary colors and our secondary colors. And what we've done is we've gotten new water and we've cleaned up our palettes. So if you look, we just got some paper towels damp and wiped those down. You can rinse them, but then it's a little harder to keep it neat. Once you've got everything cleaned up and your brushes are clean and your water is clean, you're ready to mix up those tertiary colors. So tertiary means 3. 1 plus 2 makes 3, so we're adding a primary color to a secondary color to make a tertiary color. Now, when you do this, double check that you're starting in a dry area. Just touch your piece. You don't want to start where you just finished painting and muck up your paints, because it should look nice and neat and beautiful right now. So I'm going to start over here with blue violet, and I'm using again just the basic 3 colors to get there. And when I test it out, here's our testers. You can make modifications and test it out here and get exactly the right color you want. So there are 3 different violets here, and then she got to choose the violet that worked best. And when
I started with this and I moved on through these violets.
Okay, so what you'll do is you'll check it out and you should hold it up next to your piece. Be like, is that halfway between these 2 colors? And once you've got it there, that's the color you want. Color mixing is always adjusting a little bit. Whenever you mix colors, make sure that you clean your brush before you touch these primary colors. It's a mess to clean them up. And sometimes if you try to wash it off, you'll wash the whole thing down the drain and then you won't have any color because it's just stuck on here barely. Okay? So clean your brush, touch your colors. I think I'm going to start with yellow green. So I'm going to get some yellow here. Always put some water on my brush so I have enough. And this should have halfway between yellow and green. So it'll have less blue than the green does because it's yellow-green. Now, I think that looks pretty good, but I'm going to test it on my paper here and see if it looks halfway between these 2 colors. What do you think?
I think it does.
I agree. And that's how you're going to go about the rest of them. You're going to mix a color that looks halfway between red and violet for your red violet and continue on around your color wheel. And we'll come back and show you how to do neutral colors when we've finished this. Okay, here we are with our color wheel completed, and we have gotten clean water again, and we have cleaned our palettes. So the best way to do that is to get a damp paper towel and wipe out that little section. Sometimes colors stain. The red will stain your plastic, but don't worry about it. Just wipe out all the paint. Keep this nice and neat, and always remember to clean your brush before you touch your colors so you don't have mud. However, right now we're about to make mud. We are going to make what are called our neutral colors, and down here neutral colors are going to be the browns and the grays. The way you mix browns, grays, blacks, browns. The way you mix the browns and the grays, the neutral colors, is you have to have a little bit of each of the 3 primary colors. If you don't include a little bit of each, then you have something like red violet or blue green rather than gray or brown. Brown is just gray with a little extra red or yellow in it. It's a warmer mix. And gray has a little more blue in it. So you're going to do 2 different browns and 2 different grays, or 4 different neutrals at least. So I'm going to start with a little bit of yellow here, and I'm going to try to make a brown, cleaning my brush in between each time. Are you making a brown also?
Yes.
Okay, then I'm going to get some red, and right now I've got orange. Now, if you look at the color wheel, the complement of orange is blue. That means we have all of the 3 colors in it. Now I'm going to add a little bit of blue and see what happens. Now let's see what that looks like. It looks like a reddish brown. So I'm going to put that down in one of my neutral color sections. And I'll have one neutral color. Remember, you want to make sure that you don't paint right next to that. When you do your next section, you're going to skip a space and do a section over here so that your colors don't bleed together. And then come back when your colors are dry to do the last two. So you'll have to maybe wait a tiny bit. So I've got this sort of reddish brown color here. And I think the next one I make, I'm going to want to make it more of a gray, more neutral than brown. I'll make it a gray color. Now, with watercolors, you don't have white paint. Your paper is the white. So if you want to lighten a color, you don't add white, you add water. Because the watercolors are transparent, and the more water you add, the more white of the paper shows through. So when you start mixing your colors and making lighter colors, just add water. If you want it darker, make sure you have lots of pigment. Get lots of paint on your brush, and that'll be a darker color. So I've got this nice brown here, and her brown is a more rich, like darker brown, like bark brown. Go ahead and put that somewhere on your neutrals. Pick a spot. And I'm going to keep the camera on so I can show you how to do a gray color. So it's the same thing, a little bit of each of the colors. There's yellow. Clean my brush really well in between so I keep my red, yellow, and blue nice and neat. And that looks very orangey right now. And I'm going to add some blue. I'm going to add a little more blue than I did last time. This might be too much blue. It looks like a bluish gray, but let's test it out. It's a little bit of a greenish gray, but I kind of like it. So it is a neutral color, so I'm going to use that, and I'm going to put it
How do you
a little
make
bit
black?
of water. To make black, you're going to make gray and use very, very little water. You're going to use lots of pigment, so you're going to make it very intense. Just like with here, the purple is quite dark. You can make a very dark gray. Why don't I do that with this gray? I'll try to make it darker. So I have enough water in there, and now I'm going to put a little water in with my blue, get more blue color in there, rinse my brush, get lots of red, saturated red on my brush, mix it in there. And I can get a fairly dark gray. It won't be black like ink, but you can get quite dark with watercolors. This looks kind of purple. And let's go back and add more blue. This looks more gray. Now this gray is going to be quite a bit darker. It's not quite black, but it's quite a bit darker. And you do the same kind of a thing. You can see how this one is quite a bit darker than this. You keep going and you can get even darker than that. If you want solid black, you can use ink. I mean, you can buy black watercolors, but you can also use ink. I'm going to do this dark gray here. And then I'm going to let those colors dry a little bit before I continue on with my other neutrals so that they don't bleed into each other. Your brown looks beautiful. Can you see this brown? That's a really nice tree bark color. Okay, so we'll be back when we've got the neutrals to show you. Okay, now we're all done with our neutral colors. We've got some beautiful browns and grays. Some of your grays might look more blue, some might look more green. Your browns might look more warm or more cool. So we've got different, bring yours over here, there we go. We've got different ways of doing it, and your color wheel will look like this. Your grays will all look a little bit different, and your browns, because there are infinite numbers of ways to make those. So play around with it, have fun with it, and when you're done, make sure you set this somewhere where it can dry completely. So set it aside. Let's put ours over here and clean up your mess. So we've rinsed out our water containers and dried them. I'm going to put those away. We've cleaned our palettes, and we'll carefully set those somewhere where they can dry so they don't mess things up. And we'll set those aside and put them away. And then we'll put away our brushes. Once we're done with everything, sorry, I'm walking away. Once we're done with everything, we will clean up our area so that you don't make anybody mad at your house.
You can move your pieces aside and wipe down your table.
Okay, there you go. Now, grab our artwork. If you have little bits of paint, wipe them up as soon as you can. And then when you're done, you have these beautiful, gorgeous works of art. And good for you. Okay, see you in class.